Good evening and welcome to tonight's public hearing. This hearing will include Columbus City Council's Health and Human Services and Finance Committees. I am Councilmember Priscilla Tyson, President Pro Tem of Columbus City Council and Chair of these committees. Before we begin, please be aware that this hearing is being recorded for rebroadcast on CTV, Columbus Government Television Channel 3. The rebroadcast schedule is available at www.columbus.gov. Tonight's hearing is one in a series of bi-weekly committee hearings that I hold in order to review legislation in the committees that I chair. Again, this includes Health and Human Services, Finance, and the Workforce Development Committees. The goal of these hearings is to promote transparency and provide an opportunity for city residents to learn and to speak on legislation that impacts their lives. There will be on occasions when which a committee is not covered because legislation is not always scheduled for each committee. The intent of each hearing is to review legislation that will be on City Council's agenda for the following 2 weeks. And in this case, it will be on the 25th of July. Tonight, we will hear information on legislation in the Finance and Health and Human Services Committees. Presenting legislation in this evening will be the Auditor's Office, the Tax Division Assistant Administrator, Kevin Robinson, from the Department of Finance, Deputy Director, Dan Giangardella, and from the Department of Development, Director of Community Development, Hannah Jones. I will start with the Finance Committee by turning it over to Kevin Robinson, the Auditor's Office, Tax Division Assistant Administrator.
Good afternoon, President Pro Tem Tyson. I will be sharing information with you regarding the expenditure of funds by the Income Tax Division in relation to Ordinance Number 1904-2016. Throughout the year, the Income Tax Division has periodic increases in documents received to be processed. This requires flexible staffing in the document management area to ensure that those documents are timely opened and placed into our workflow application in order to maintain production levels. Temporary staffing provides this flexibility in assisting division full-time staff. Formal bids were received for this service and the lowest bidder was determined to be non-responsive. Diversity Search Group was determined to be the most responsive, responsible, and best bidder. This legislation will authorize the expenditure of up to $80,000 for the period extending from October 3rd, 2016 through October 2nd, 2017 for temporary staffing as required. These temporary staff members open and sort mail received, prep and scan documents to be placed in our workflow system, as well as provide data entry services. Melinda Frank, the Division of Income Tax Administrator, apologizes for the error in the effective dates previously submitted by email to you, and those have been corrected.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I don't have any questions. I certainly have heard good things about the Diversity Search Group.
Well, thank you.
And so with that, we certainly want to make sure that you have the staffing that is necessary to for the Division of Income Tax. And so with that, I will be asking my colleagues on Monday to pass this legislation.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. Our next presenter will be from the Department of Finance. It will be Deputy Director Giangardella. Good evening.
Good evening. President Pro Tem Tyson, for Monday evening, July 25th. In total, I think we'll have around 16, 17 ordinances. 9 of those were discussed at the previous hearing. I have 7 new ordinances this evening to present. The first one, 1843-2016, is an ordinance that authorizes Finance and Management Director to enter into an agreement for the option to establish 5 universal term contracts for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning parts and filters for city agencies. The total expense, given this is a UTC, will be $5, $1 for each of the vendors. Those 5 vendors are Columbus Climate Control Company, Allied Supply Company Incorporated, Progress Supply and Company, GD Supply Incorporated, doing business as Johnstone Supply, and American Air Filter Company. We are asking for a bid waiver due to, again, the multiple award of suppliers for similar categories. The nice thing about these particular contracts is, as you know, we have a variety of HVAC equipment in our hundreds of city buildings. So this obviously gives us flexibility to buy products from several different suppliers who are all going to be in our e-catalog system through Vitamaya, and gives us the ability for each division to get a very competitive price. So we'll present this on Monday evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we've had some discussion previously about thinking about the code changes that we were looking for in regards of, we continue to waive competitive bidding on multiple suppliers or multiple contracts. Do you have any idea as to when we think we're going to be having those discussions regarding those changes?
I don't have any update this evening, but as soon as I do, we will obviously get with your office and discuss that. I know it is something that you and the Director of Finance have discussed numerous times. It's something we do want to do. It's obviously beneficial to the city. It saves us money. And at this point, of course, it's just a matter of a code change to allow us to not have to request council for the waiver each time we present these. So we will follow up with your office when we have a time frame for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And this legislation, the total estimated expenditure is $250,000.
That's correct, across the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next ordinance we have is 1912-2016. This is an ordinance that authorizes financial management to enter into a contract in the amount of approximately $1 million in capital funding with R.W. Sutherland Construction Company for the construction of a metal pavilion located at the Fleet Auction lot at 423 Groves Road. This project will be a pre-engineered metal pavilion. The Fleet Management Division conducts online auctions of vehicles 4 or 5 times a year. They need a place to just briefly house them and to put them under and out of the weather just for a short period of time before those are sold. This particular contract was bid. There were 2 bidders, Ohio Paving Contracting and Sutherland. OPC, or Ohio Paving, was the low bid. However, they did not submit a complete subcontractor list, which they are required to do on the bid specification. They also had an incomplete bond submission and a faulty affidavit, amongst some other issues with their bid. So we have gone to the second low bid, which is Sutherland, and we'd like to award this for a total of $1,061,000. We added about $65,000 for contingency for some additional work on that structure by the CNG storage tank. So with that, this total will be about $1,061,000.
Thank you. And you mentioned that this pre-engineered metal pavilion would be used to house the vehicles that be auctioned off. And can you talk about the importance of the fleet vehicle sales and how you think this is going to help us with continuing to sell those vehicles?
Yes, the auction of fleet vehicles has, in some respects, benefited the city greatly over the last half a dozen or so years. Many years ago, we used to do about once a year what we called a mail order auction of vehicles, which firms had to mail order their bids for equipment in. We would basically have to take pictures or the companies could come out and inspect that equipment. It was very cumbersome, but it did net us usually $300,000 to $400,000, but it was only on a once-a-year basis. Several years ago, Fleet Management went to an online system, which enables them to do these auctions more frequently. It also opens up the bidders to, frankly, anyone across the nation, and even occasionally international people that want to buy our equipment. And so we have seen an exponential increase in the amount of money we are gaining from these auctions of these vehicles, because you have a lot larger auction pool. And so we have seen doubling, tripling, even quadruple increases in the dollars that we get from auctioning this stuff off. And the pavilion will, when Fleet moved to Groves Road, and then the warehouse property across the street was purchased several years ago, it gave us additional land to pull those vehicles in before we had to wait until the departments could bring that stuff to a single location. Now we can take it off their hands when they're ready to dispose of it. We have a place that's secure for it, and this will, by putting this just brief cover over it, will allow those vehicles to be protected until we can auction them, and then the companies that win the bid come pick them up.
All right, thank you. I think that just doing some research, that I know the fleet brings in now about $1 million in those vehicles, so that's
correct.
That's significant. Thank you. Okay.
We have Ordinance 1921, 2016, which authorizes Finance and Management Director to enter into contract for $775,000 in capital funds with R.W. Sutherland Building Company for the East Side Health Center parking lot expansion, Phase 2. This Phase 1, obviously, of this project was started and passed in 2015. This particular part of it will complete the parking lot expansion out there. We have the need for additional parking. This will give us a gated parking facility with approximately 48 parking spaces to go along with that East Side Health Center. This was a bid project. Sutherland is the low bid on this, and we are using capital funds to complete this parking lot for employees.
And you said this is, I know we had legislation before, and you're saying that this will complete the whole parking area, because it's right next door to the...
That's correct. Yeah, Phase 1, I believe, was the existing parking structure on the actual site. There was some demolition work done, but this particular one will complete give them additional parking adjacent to that facility.
Okay, thank you.
We also have an ordinance 1936, 2016. This authorizes Financial Management Director to grant Ohio Power Company, otherwise doing business as AEP, a utility easement for a portion of the city's real property at 1198 East Main Street, which incidentally is the East Side Health Center, for no financial interest. So in essence, when we're doing this parking lot that we just referred to in the previous ordinance, we discovered there's a utility easement for the power company, and obviously we want to be able to grant them that in the event that they would have to do any work in that area. They have some equipment there now, some power equipment that feeds into the East Side Health Center and probably some adjacent structures. So obviously it's in our best interest, and the city attorneys advise us to grant them that easement, and this is what this ordinance will do, and there's no cost to us or frankly any revenue to us for doing so.
Thank you.
Ordinance 1942, 2016 authorizes the Finance and Management Director to modify an existing contract with KNS Services in the amount of $60,000 for the installation of a new bidirectional amplifier system for the City Hall Municipal Security Radio Communications. This amplifier will be used to boost our security radio signal at various areas on the campus. Currently, our security staff carries digital radios, 800 megahertz digital radios they use for short wave communications. There are occasionally some spots where we need to boost that amplification where we could have a better signal. This investment will enable us to do that. We are using KNS. As I think presented previously before council, KNS is the city standard for our communications and signaling in our security area. We have various systems that they support, not only in City Hall, but the Health Department, Arlingate, and a variety of city facilities. Therefore, we are requesting a bid waiver for them to do this particular work, but it will go a long way to helping just a few areas, and they are very few, where we could have improved signal for our radio communication for our security staff.
And the cost is $60,000?
$60,000, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I have an ordinance 1974, 2016. This will authorize Financial Management Director to modify an existing agreement with AEP Energy for 50% power green sourcing for our various departments for city-owned facilities. It will also extend the current power agreement that we have with them from approximately additional year. Right now, we have a power purchase agreement with them on pricing through May of 2018. We'd like to extend that for an additional year. And again, just in kind of also support the green sourcing. So we're buying essentially green energy from them up to 50%. The reason why we're requesting this now, even though the contract doesn't expire for 3 more years, is that right now the market is very good, but we anticipate that the market will go up anywhere from 2 to 3%, and we'd like to add an additional year to kind of lock that pricing in and save, hopefully, the city some money on purchasing of electricity.
And you're anticipating that this contract will save us $42,500, is that correct, over the next couple of years?
That is correct.
Okay. And there are no other costs associated with this since it's already a contract?
No, that's correct. It's essentially we're just extending it for another year because we anticipate the market may rise in the future, and obviously we'd like to take advantage of the good pricing at this time. But we don't anticipate any additional cost to doing so. But like you said, hopefully a savings to us.
Well, and I certainly appreciate that you're always identifying opportunities for us to save money. Thank you.
You're welcome. Finally, this evening, I have ordinance 1980-2016. This ordinance will authorize the city to enter into a lease agreement and as well as potential supplemental lease agreements with the River South Authority in connection with and supporting the redevelopment and revitalizations of the Scioto Peninsula. This ordinance will allow the Columbus Downtown Corporation, otherwise known as the CDDC, or the River South Authority, to continue the redevelopment of the 56-acre Scioto Peninsula. Of course, the peninsula is that sort of geographic area bounded by the railroad tracks to the west of the Scioto River, the Veterans Memorial location to the river on the north, the Scioto River to the east, certainly towards the city, and then just past Main Street to the Scioto River on the south. In accordance with the Scioto Peninsula Master Plan, which is also part of the 2010 Downtown Strategic Plan, both of which at times I think this council not only charged the CDCE to conduct these plans, but eventually adopted the resolutions for these as well. The CDC presented the current Scioto Peninsula Master Plan in August of 2013, which called for the redevelopment and revitalization of the peninsula as well as parts of Franklinton, including the now under construction Veterans Memorial and Museum, as well as the discussion of a mixed-use development and potentially housing for the peninsula or that Franklinton area, as well as an underground parking garage and the park and recreation space above that. These leases that are being proposed will provide the CDC with the authority to conduct the financing and construction of the underground garage, as well as the park and recreation space. The city will continue to own the land that's just west of COSI, but will grant the CDC the control of the development of that site, again, which would be the underground parking structure and the park above that structure. The redevelopment goals are in line with the 2002 Downtown Columbus Plan, the 2010 Downtown Columbus Strategic Plan, and as I said, also included in the 2013 Scioto Peninsula Master Plan. So at this time, at the present time, there'll be no funding impact to the city, but beginning, we believe, in January 2018 is when the estimated future cost will occur, and those costs will be accounted for in our SIT, Special Income Tax Fund analysis. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about this ordinance.
Thank you. One question I'll ask, is this a new type of agreement, or have we set this precedence before? I think the viewing and listening audience would like to know that.
Sure. We have done this, the city has done this type of arrangements with the CDDC before. As you know, we have 2 parking decks that I think it's been maybe a half a dozen years ago now that we made this arrangement with them that the CDDC constructed, issued the debt, and then the city, of course, has paid that debt and also garnered the net proceeds from those as well. Those have been very successful garages for the city, and in fact, so successful that we have, we'll probably pay down that debt well before the initial bonds were due. So this is a very similar arrangement to that. This property will be leased to the CDCC, and then they will issue debt to support the construction of that parking debt. And there will be a similar financial arrangements on paying off that debt that we have for the garages.
So we get the proceeds from the parking garages and pay off the debt.
Yeah, the CDC will manage that underground parking garage, and the city will retire the debt payment through analysis of the SIT on an annual basis, and the city will always retain ownership of that garage, and then once the bond debt is retired, then the lease agreement essentially terminates at that point. But in the meantime, the CDDC will manage that facility.
Thank you. And when do we expect this garage to be completed?
It's our anticipation, and obviously the CDDC will do the bidding and so forth. And in fact, as you may recall, the city even provided $4 million for design, I think, at the end of 2015 for that. We anticipate that they will break ground by the end of this year, if not slightly sooner, and that garage will be completed by the end of 2017.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would now like to move to Human Services and Ms. Hannah Jones. See Hannah Reed there, almost had to think about it. Ms. Hannah Jones will make the presentation.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Tyson. Tonight, for your consideration, the Department of Development has 2 ordinances. The first ordinance is 1962-2016. This ordinance provides $150,000 to support the work of Star House, which serves the homeless youth in our community, and I would like to invite Ann Bischoff, who serves as the Executive Director of Star House, up to talk more about the services they provide and that this funding will support. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 nights in a row in Chambers.
Oh, good to see you again, yeah. Good evening, President Pro Tem Tyson. Thank you for considering continued support of OSU Star House. I'll give a little bit of a history on the organization. We started 10 years ago as a research project at The Ohio State University. Some of the questions asked in that research were, who are the young people in our city who are street living and otherwise homeless and disconnected from family? What are the barriers they're facing? And how can we as a community better meet their needs and help them overcome those barriers? The first week of that research, we served a handful of young people, ages 14 to 24. Fast forward 4.5 years to the end of that research project, and we were serving 300 young people between those ages. So whereas most research projects end and academics share best practices and move on, we couldn't very well abandon ship since we were serving 300 young people. So a program was born. This past year, we served more than 800 young people between the ages of 14 and 24 in an 1,800 square foot house. In November of last year, as you know, we moved into a brand new facility, 14,000 square feet, Thanks to the generous donations from the community, including the City of Columbus. Thank you for that. We're able now to serve many more young people, provide more resources. In the 1,800 square foot home, we were meeting basic needs, food, clothing, shelter. The result of the research that we conducted initially led us to understand the challenges that these young people face. They're leaving their homes, they're running away from abusive situations. Nearly all of these young people have experienced abuse and neglect. As a result, they don't trust people, and they're not reaching out for the resources that are immediately available to them. So we welcome them with open arms. We ask very little of them in the beginning. As they come for these basic needs that I mentioned earlier, they're building trust with our staff and being connected with additional resources in the community. So in a lot of ways, we're getting them ready for shelters, getting them ready for Huck House, for example. With our new facility, the new 14,000 square foot facility, we're not only able to meet those basic needs, but we can begin to think about more in-house programming, such as in-house education, jobs training, and in-house jobs through social enterprise and partnerships with other social enterprises. So again, thank you for considering continued support, and I'd open it up for any questions you might have.
Just a couple questions. First of all, thank you for your work and especially to working with our young people from the ages of 14 to 24. My first question is, tell me about some of the issues and how do you help the individuals who are around 14 years of age?
14 years of age. So most of our clients or guests, as we call them, are adults. 80% are adults. There are 20% of whom who are young. So the first thing we do is to ensure they're where they're supposed to be. But we are a drop-in center. We are not a shelter. So we're in a lot of ways, or at least in this case, similar to what a recreation center would be. We're ensuring that they have what they need. If the police need to be notified, if there's a missing person, we ensure that their needs are met in that regard.
And then talk to me a little bit about your relationship. You mentioned Huck House. How do you interact with Huck House?
Right. So we have more than 30 outside partners we work with. Our youth, we've done research that shows that there's a specific subset of the homeless population in our community, for whatever reason, that is not reaching out to shelters. And it really boils down to that trust factor. So we open our doors, meet their basic needs, like I mentioned before, build that relationship, and then we're able to encourage them to seek out resources such as Huck House. So it's a referral relationship that we have with them.
Well, thank you so very much, and thank you for providing this amazing resource to our young individuals in our community, some of them who are homeless, as you're saying, and most of them are homeless. But thank you for the services you're providing them. I look forward to the entrepreneurial, you mentioned some of the entrepreneurial endeavors that will come from the young people there through since you have a larger facility, that help them not only to get jobs, but also use their entrepreneurial spirit to come up with maybe some new businesses in the city. So thank you for your work, and this legislation is for $150,000. All right. This will be on the agenda for Monday.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Our second ordinance this evening is ordinance 1973-2016. This ordinance is for $100,000, $50,000 going to Mary Haven and $50,000 going to St. Vincent's Family Center. This commitment represents the third year of a 3-year commitment made for capital improvements to both facilities. First, I'd like to invite up Ms. Vivian Russell, who serves as the CFO of Mary Haven, to talk about the improvements that have been made to their facility.
This is interesting because we have Ms. Russell, and then we have in the room the new president and CEO from Mary Haven, and so Mr. Sean Holt's here too. So this will be Sean's finding out all the information tonight in chambers. So welcome, Mr. Holt, and Ms. Russell, the floor is yours.
So thank you. Good evening, President Pro Tem Tyson. As you know, this ordinance is to authorize the third of 3 payments from the city to Mary Haven's capacity expansion capital campaign, for which we remain very grateful. So we're happy to report that we've already received commitments of $1.6 million towards our $2 million goal. And the city has been joined by other contributors from the business and philanthropic community, such as the Ohio Osteopathic Heritage Foundation, the Nationwide Foundation, Grange Insurance, AEP, the Columbus Foundation, and other private donors, including the Crane family. So the increased rate of prescription pill and opiate addiction has changed the face of addiction in Central Ohio and the demand for Mary Haven services. For the past 2 years, more than 3/4 of Mary Haven's patients have been addicted to opiates. There are now waiting lists for all inpatient services and many of the outpatient services at the main campus, and waiting lists for admissions to our Women's Center as well. So the reality we face in Central Ohio is that the need for treatment exceeds the amount of physical space to treat every patient who needs help. Therefore, Mary Haven launched its $2 million capital campaign to increase its capacity to treat additional patients, both at the main campus and at the Women's Center. So the campaign was intended to make possible a 9,000 square foot expansion at the main campus facility and a 4,000 square foot expansion at the Women's Center. At a minimum, these expansions will allow Mary Haven to serve an additional 350 patients each year. So the capital project was intended to provide 8 additional beds for medical detoxification, which is a 33% increase in our capacity, 4 additional beds for adult inpatient, providing a 17% increase in capacity, and 6 additional beds for the Women's Extended Care Center, which is also a 17% increase in their capacity, as well as office space and facilities for expanded outpatient services as well. So by way of an update, we're pleased to say that we have completed the renovations at the main campus. So we broke ground and started construction on December 7th, and on June 22nd, we were able to dedicate the Osteopathic Heritage Foundation for Medically Assisted Services Wing and the Paul Coleman Adult Inpatient Wing, which was made possible by the generosity of the Crane family. So we're moving well along with everything at the main campus, and our next agenda item will be to complete the Women's Center renovations that were part of the original campaign. And again, we're very, very grateful for your support, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. So of the $2 million that's needed, you have 1.6, so you're looking to find the other $400,000 to complete, this will be for the completion of the Women's Center?
That's correct.
Okay. And you feel very comfortable that you're going to be able to get the additional $400,000?
We do. We
Okay,
do.
great. Well, I'm excited because certainly this was one of the amendments that I submitted as a council member to be able to support Mary Haven, as well as the next speaker that's going to come up. The work that you do is so critically important for families. And certainly, as you said, there are waiting lists for individuals who want your services. And you certainly do a fantastic job of healing families. And I'm glad we have, and gave the numbers, 33% increase in detox beds, 17% of the inpatient, and then 17% for women. And of course, we know that the demand is greater than even that. But again, just appreciate the efforts that under Paul Coleman and now, your leadership, and just ensuring that individuals who now have a new illness are able to have their illnesses met through the work of Mary Haven. So very happy to be able to support you in this endeavor. Of the total amount that I know was put in was $150,000
Correct.
that we have provided to you on this journey. So thank you for coming down and sharing the success of the program, and I look forward to the additional beds at the Women's Center. So just keep me informed with that information.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the work that you do each and every day.
Thanks.
And now I would like to invite up Mr. Sean Holt, who currently serves as the CEO for the St. Vincent Family Center, to talk about the improvements made there.
Good evening, Mr. Holt.
Good evening, President Pro Tem Tyson.
I'm excited about your new role. I'm also sad about you leaving St. Vincent's. And do we know who the replacement's going to be yet? Is it public?
It is public.
Who's it going to be?
I start August 29th.
Well, you're going to. I know you're going.
Yeah.
Do we know who's going to take your place at St. Vincent?
Interim board member is going to take the place, and they're going to conduct a search.
They're going to conduct a search?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for those kind words. As you know, St. Vincent Family Center has been a pillar in this community for 141 years. At Main Street in Kelton, we decided to build a brand-new 21,000 square foot building because our wait list, like Vivian said, was amazing. Children and families needed services, and we had no space. It's interesting. We've been around all that time, and while our mission has changed, our goal has always remained the same, and that is to make good kids better, because we believe that all kids are good, some just need a little extra help. This year, through the generosity of the City of Columbus and numerous tours that individuals like yourself have made, we were lucky to complete a 21,000 square foot building. We added 17 more classrooms, we provided services to 100 more kids, which brings our yearly total up to about 4,000 kids, children, and families. This new building has been transformational to our children. And it's unfortunate, but 95% of our kids live in poverty. And so having them come to a new space and having to go out in the community and talk to parents about, hey, send your kids to us. We know that he or she may have issues, but we have this nice new facility to bring them to learn. So we're really, really thankful for that. This would be the last installment of our $150,000. So we can't even say enough for your advocacy, the many tours that you have taken, helping us in our groundbreaking ceremony, and just so thankful for the generosity of City of Columbus.
Thank you so very much, and again, for the work that you do. Mental health, addiction, these are, and just there are a number of health-related illnesses that I care deeply about. And certainly two of those are in this, well, really everyone from the homeless to, because I mean, a lot of that people who have either for they're homeless or they're running away for something, I mean, all that's trauma. So that deals with trauma of some sort. And so just listening to the nonprofits that are in this room today and just appreciate the work that each of you do. Your work has been is phenomenal, taking care of children, making good kids better. I love that, and I'm so glad you now have 17 more classrooms to be able to meet the growing need in our community and provide those resources to children, and giving hope back to families and getting kids to be able to get whatever services that they need. To be able to go on and have successful lives, and St. Vincent's is critical and really important in that regard. So thank you for the work that you have certainly done. Your leadership around, you think about a 2,100 square foot addition to your building, that's phenomenal work. So thankful you were at St. Vincent's to do that. And you've heard the need from Ms. Russell. You know the need in this community, and we certainly would hope that, I know you don't want to do another capital campaign. We're going to finish up this one for that $200,000, but the need is great in this community, and Mary Haven is a stellar organization, and we need to continue to help make lives better for those families and children that they serve too. So congratulations on your new role. Look forward. Thank you for coming down and giving me an update, and very thankful that I was able to work with my colleagues to be able to get $150,000 to support your campaign also.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all for this evening. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, well, I hope this evening's hearing has provided valuable information on the legislation from the Auditor's Office, the finance-related legislation that is necessary to support our ongoing city operations, and also the legislation from the Department of Development, which is so critically important to meet the needs of our residents in our community. As residents, these hearings are an opportunity for you to learn and to become engaged in issues that are presented. Before we conclude tonight's hearing, I want to thank the Auditor's Office, the Tax Division Assistant Administrator Kevin Robinson, from the Department of Finance, Deputy Director Dan Giangardella, from the Department of Development, the Director of Community Development, Hannah Jones, and then my fellow staff, council members and their staffs who serve this community well each and every day. I also want to thank City Council's Legislative Research Office, Michael Kessler, who leads the Legislative Research Team, Andrew Dwyer, who staffs Health and Human Services and Workforce Development. I also want to thank Matt Erickson, who staffs the Finance Committee, and Brendan Kelly from the City Council's Legislative Affairs Office. And I want to thank my friend Nancy Sully, who is with the community development of the City Council. Think of all these titles now. And then, of course, the hardworking team of CTV who make these hearings possible. But lastly, my staff, Nicole Harper and Carl Williams, do a fantastic job and keeping me moving forward with juggling all of our schedules. So thank you to them. And then also the residents of our community who make our city the best place to live, work, and to raise a family. Thank you so much for being here, and the hearing is adjourned.